Welcome to From the Sidelines, a production of University Athletics. I'm Chris Saunders with co-host Bacchus Rolle. Today we're talking about women in swimming, and we're talking to the pioneer of swimming in the Olympic movement, Nikia Deaveux-Christie. We have her coming right back. You're watching From the Sidelines. Welcome back to From the Sidelines. I'm Chris Saunders with co-host Bacchus Rolle. Today we're talking with Nikia Deaveux-Christie. She was the very first woman to qualify for the Olympics in swimming. Nikia joins us. Nikia, thank you so much. I remember that day as clear as it was yesterday. I remember it was at Nationals. You swam the opposite way because you wanted to take advantage of the wind that day. What was that like? Did it seem as significant to you at the time as it is now, knowing that because of that, there are so many women now in swimming at the Olympic level?
Chris, thanks for having me. Bacchus, thanks for having me. Of course, at the time, it seemed extremely significant. It had been years in the making, years of people planting in my head that this thing is a possibility. And it's still one of one of the most amazing moments in my life. And like you said, I went from the opposite end of the pool, so everything was kind of, it's not something that I had practiced, not something that I had trained for, so to speak. There are different blocks now, you go in a different direction, things are a little different, and people who are in the world of sports understand how those small things can make a difference. So it was just one of those, okay, we're at the end of Nationals. I didn't qualify in the heats. I didn't qualify when we swam the finals. Let's give this a shot. And I went out there and said, whatever happens now, I'm going to be satisfied. And I touched the wall, and I think that there was so much shock that nobody really reacted. So I got out of the pool thinking, okay, well, I didn't make it. When I looked over, my mother was crying, so I thought, okay, I definitely didn't make it. And then people realized, and there was an uproar, and they came running, and it's still one of the most amazing moments.
The first Bahamian woman to qualify and to attend the Olympics. That was in 2004. That was Sydney, and Athens. Pardon me, in Athens. And once you got there, what was that like to swim with some of the big names in swimming at the time? So
I'll tell you a funny story. The entire experience was just amazing and overwhelming, right? So I was 18 at the time, very young in the grand scheme of things. And at that time, the world record holder and the fastest woman in the world was Nikia Deaveux-Christie. So just being there, starry-eyed, looking around, and one of the first encounters I had with one of these big athletes, I was coming out of the cafeteria, and I bumped into somebody who was getting their bag from the checkpoint, and the person turned around, and it was Nikia Deaveux-Christie.
Right.
And I froze. And Alan Murray, who was my coach, and it wasn't at the Olympics, sorry, it was before then. He was there, and he said, okay, if you're going to go to the Olympics, you can't, right? You are all here for the same reason, right? So I thought I was ready for the Olympics. It was big time. There were big names. You're just this young person, and all of these people who are here, right, gold medalists, world record holders. And so that first experience was overwhelming, but in a good way.
And then that was her last appearance at the Olympics too,
yes,
right?
Yes.
So that was even more special just to be able to swim there.
Yeah, just to swim there, to see her and all the many amazing athletes. I mean, and even the Bahamian athletes who we went with, right? I went with some heavy hitters, and I'm standing here posing in the picture with these gold medalists, and it was a wonderful experience.
And then just to put it into perspective, you didn't just go there to finish last. I think you finished, I know you finished 45th out of 75.
Oh,
so you weren't I mean, it wasn't a semi-finalist, but you weren't just there to make up the numbers. I mean, you were a legit competitor at that point.
Yeah, and to talk a little bit about the overwhelming, it wasn't my best time either. So I didn't swim my fastest time. It was just, and usually Alan, who I had mentioned, he would say, you know, you need to go to another Olympics because now you have everything, you know,
out of your system.
Out of your system now, and you go back and it's so you did well. You came here, you made it, and you know things are a little overwhelming, but I didn't get the chance to go back, but I did get to see some other amazing women go back and do great things after that.
So Nikia, tell me, powerful swimmer, is it a training? Is it luck? Is it genetics? A combination of all? Or was it just the stars lined up that day and made it happen for you?
Okay, so you mentioned genetics. If you ask my father, that's what it is. So I have to get that out there.
Yeah. I'm quite sure he would say that.
Yeah, so let's get that out of the way. I think it is a combination of talent, preparation, and the stars or blessings.
Yes.
You know, it's something that like I said, I had put that goal in my mind since I was 9 years old. And it was something that I knew was going to happen.
Oh, that's great to hear. So it sounds like it was planning,
yes.
And you were checking off boxes as you went.
That was the, you know, and I never thought about it when I was a little girl until my coach at the time, Tony Kennedy, affectionately known as TK, came to me on the pool deck and said, you know, we've never had a woman go to swimming for the Bahamas. And you know, there were several other amazing female swimmers
Yes.
Before me. So I guess I thought someone else is going to get there eventually, right? Someone's going to pave the way. So he said, you know, you could be the first, and you need to start thinking that way. I was 9, right? So I went to swim meets to eat the homemade Rice Krispie treats.
Oh yeah.
Oh, God.
To hang out with my friends. And swimming was fun. I enjoyed it. But at 9, I didn't show up to say I'm coming here so I could go to the Olympics, right? But he said that to me at 9, and even if at that time I said it just to say it, or, you know, that I said, you know what, I'm going to go to the Olympics, but I said it intentionally, and that is the way I operated as an athlete from moving forward.
Good.
So.
All right, so Nikia Deaveux-Christie, we're going to be calling her that. It's kind of weird to try to put that all together. But we talked a little bit about her career. When we come back, we'll talk about not only her career, but what she thinks about women in sports, specifically in swimming, and the way that she paved here in the Bahamas. You're watching From the Sidelines.
Well, what I'd be looking for in an athlete is most especially that dedication, that commitment, that zeal of drive. You don't have to be the best, but as a coach, we will make you better than best.
A good athlete has to be intelligent, because in a game where you're playing against another human being and they're reacting and you're reacting, you have to have that intelligence. And then you have to combine that, of course, with the physical, of course, with the mental, because if you can break this guy in any one of those elements, the mental, the physical, or his fitness, if you're not fit enough and he's more fit than you and he outwears you, you're gonna lose. So there's so many different ways of winning, and the strategy and all it, the complexity makes it beautiful. It's kind of like moving chess.
Over the years, there's been the great debate in basketball, talent versus hard work. You know, where the hard worker is one that works hard 100% of the time. Talent, player who's very talented, but you know, maybe a bit lazy, may just rely on his ability. But the hard worker works hard every time. And I would say, if it was one core quality that you would have to possess to be a real Mingo basketball player, would be just a desire to work.
Welcome back to From the Sidelines, a production of UB Athletics. I'm Chris Saunders with Bacchus Rolle. Today we're talking with Nikia Deaveux-Christie, the very first Bahamian woman to qualify for swimming for the Bahamas at the Olympic level. And again, she's won Carifta, she's won many things, national champion in a lot of sports. And you sort of kind of talked about it a little bit when you said TK told you that you could be the first. At 9 years old, like you said, the Rice Krispie treats was why you went to swim meets. But after you started you qualified, you went to the Olympics, did it sort of kind of set into you once you started to see the likes of Ariana van der Poel-Wallace come behind you and make an impact at the swimming, especially females in swimming?
Yeah, so I think, like I said, there were many greats before me who just could not get to that level, but they all served their purpose.
Yes.
And I realized that I served mine.
Yes.
So I didn't go any further than the heat, but I broke the ceiling,
Yes.
I guess, for lack of a better term. And I take that responsibility very seriously, and I'm very honored to be that person, that woman. So, there are times when I thought, what if I tried to go back again for another Olympics? What if I didn't step back when I did? Or what if maybe I took that 1 year off and I went back? Mm-hmm. But I have made peace with it, and I've realized that my role was an important one. That I was the one to break the door down, or like Bahamians say, bust the door down, right? And I am very, very happy with that, and very pleased to see what Alana would have come behind and done, and what Ariana would have come behind to do even greater. And so I understand the weight of what it was that I did. And like I said, I couldn't have gotten there without the women who did what they did. You talked about before we got on air, Kim going sub 1 minute, right? Which was amazing at that time. If she didn't do it, it might have been years and years before that happened, and maybe I wouldn't have been the one, Right. So, I understand the impact of that, and I hope that it continues, that young girls, see what Ariana did, how far she would have gotten, she advanced. And so I think that we all have an important role to play, and throughout the years, we've seen the women kick down the doors or bust down the doors. And I hope that we see it until we have our gold medalist.
In swimming.
In swimming.
Why do you think it's so important for you to be that representation, and for that representation to occur in swimming or in sports in general, that you have women representation?
Right, so it is a similar example to what I used, right? I never thought of going to the Olympics or being the first person until someone said, right? And because there was no one that did it, right? When we went to swimming, we weren't talking about going to the Olympics as women swimmers. It wasn't something, a topic of conversation or a discussion, really. So now you see it happen. So I did it, and little girls are talking about going to the Olympics. Ariana and Alana are talking about going to the next one.
Right.
They went, 2 of them went. So maybe there's a relay team talking about the 4 of us are going to go to the next Olympics. And that's sort of a trending thing right now. Representation matters. We're hearing it in different facets all over. And I think that, to have women represented. And I must say that in the Bahamas, we have many heavy hitters in sports when it comes to females, right? We've seen them over the years. But we need more. We always need more. We need more in different sports. We need team sports for women. We can always do a better job. So while we have amazing females, and my favorite, because that's when I was a little girl, the Golden Girls, and we've been seeing this trend of women doing great things in sports, I think we need to see more of it. It's so important, because it not only it lets little girls know, or young girls and young women know that I too can do that, or that can be done. It encourages them to be great, even if it's ballet, even if it's I want to be an engineer, or women are out there doing great things.
Excellent. Nikia, have you seen, the development of women in swimming? And you talked about those just after you, but let's talk about 2018, 2019. Do you see that same spark and desire in the little darlings that are swimming now that go into swim meets for Rice Krispie treats. Have you identified possibly maybe that one?
Listen, there are so many of them, and I don't know if they go for the treats and the Rice Krispie treats anymore.
They're serious.
They mean
They are
business.
very serious.
They have the suits. They're interested in the goggles. I mean, when I was coming up, we went and whatever we had, we went there for fun, and we were great because of talent that someone had to come along and nurture. The kids are realizing their talent very early now, and they are being purposeful about it. So I think from a younger age, you see these kids are serious. And even when I was swimming at the 15 and over level, and as I got older, 20, etc., we talked about in our circles how these kids are so much more serious at a younger age than we were when we went to competition.
I'll tell you one of the things that I love about swimming is the dedication that you find at the lowest level, or the youngest level. The men's basketball team would normally practice at the Kendall Isaacs gym, and I always say, well, I'm an early bird, so we're practicing at 5:30. 5:30, the pool is crowded. Swimmers are very dedicated to their craft. How do you plant that seed of hope and passion in the younger generation of swimmers?
Yeah, well, it's not for the weak. The early morning, wet, cold sometimes. But I think, you start them early, not too early. You don't want to burn out. Burnout is a serious thing in sports, especially with swimming, because there's usually morning and afternoon training, and then you have to incorporate dry land training or weight training. But you start early. So it was, my mom started by waking me up and pushing me to go, and me complaining about it, and then eventually it was me waking up and saying, I need to get to practice. So you plant that seed early when it's appropriate, and that is when you start to see who's really serious about the sport and maybe who's not so serious or prefers to do another sport, because there are points when it's not fun.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yes.
So I think you plant that seed early, and and you nurture that.
All right, so we talked about Nikia Deaveux-Christie and how women in sports is important. That representation, definitely something that we need to push here in the Bahamas, like she said, in team sports and individual sports. When we come back, we'll talk about how swimming and sports itself can help impact society. You're watching From the Sideline.
Because you have to work hard in the classroom and then translate that to basketball, into the practice sessions, into the games, and work hard in that environment as well.
You need to do your academics to a high level. And we're not asking for 4.0, that'd be great. But we are demanding that if you are a student athlete, that you keep a certain GPA. That's mandatory. That's mandatory with the University of the Bahamas. That's mandatory with the University of Miami, et cetera, et cetera. You have to keep that grade point average there.
I blocking gold shots like I blocking basketball shots. You ask me, go UV wingos all day. Oh, lead that one film. Lead that one film. I can cross. Oh. But they do it twice. They do it twice. They do it twice. The light. Hold on. I gotta make sure I get this good shot. The light in my eye. Why you dabbing? Why you dabbing? The light in my eye.
Welcome back to From the Sidelines. I'm Chris Saunders with co-host Bacchus Rolle. We're here talking with Nikia Deaveux-Christie about swimming. She's one of the pioneers of swimming for women in the Bahamas. But now we want to talk a little bit about how sports and swimming you think can impact society. I know that we know that sports takes young people and gives them an outlet. How important you think it is to have not only female representation, but broad representation in swimming to help, and how would that help society, you think?
Yeah, so sports plays a huge role in the development of young people in society. And maybe, your child or children, they don't want to go to the Olympics. Maybe they don't want to go to the NBA. But having that background, it teaches discipline. It gives you a purpose. It keeps you busy, away from a lot of other distractions that could take you down the wrong path. And speaking to women specifically, or to young girls specifically, there was a study done, I want to say about 10 years ago, 8 to 10 years ago, and of course it was an American study, but I think it's interesting to reference. They sampled a certain area, and they found that 80% of female executives had a sports background. And so the one of the reasons, or the push for sports is it makes female young women leaders, or it gives them that drive for leadership or to be greater. Of course, you can be a leader and not have a sports background. We're not discounting that, but I guess it's that drive. And I know from my own personal experience, I'm never happy settling for anything in sports, in the workplace. You have that drive, that discipline. So that's important, right? So that's a way that it shapes society, because it builds leaders, yes, male and female. And then an issue in our society, health, right? It is important for young women to see healthy women, for young men to see healthy men, and not just through fad dieting, not just Instagram models. So it's all the rage and filters and all these things. It's important to see. So okay, you don't want to go to the Olympics, but do you want to be healthy? Do you want to be active? Do you want, not only for aesthetics, right? Of course, everybody wants to look a certain way, but to be a healthy person, let's get you in some sports, even if you just do it in high school. And then education, whether it's here at UB or abroad, athletics, sports is an avenue for you to get educated if you can't afford your own education. There's so many ways that sports impacts the society by giving young people opportunities, education, for jobs, health, and to encourage them to be leaders.
I know that swimming sometimes gets the moniker or the title that it's an elitist sport. How do we, as a society, push to get that change, to have more inclusive representation of Bahamians across the board in swimming? What type of push do you think needs to happen? I know Andy Knowles then used to do the Learn to Swim and really push it in the primary schools.
They still do.
In the government school. Well, he started Learn to Swim, and then now he's doing it in the government schools, and I think that's a first step. What else do you think needs to happen to have broader representation? Because again, we may have that next Ariana Van der Poel-Wallace, who finished 9th in the semifinal, this close to making it to a final.
Yes.
That was in Rio.
Yes.
In Rio, to get that close, that we may have another Ariana Van der Poel-Wallace out there who nobody is thinking, well, you're not from an elitist area, so swimming can't be for you. How do we make that change?
Yeah, and it's unfortunate, and I understand the view, because you have to buy a swimsuit, you have to buy a swim cap, you have to buy goggles, whereas if you're doing track and field or basketball, you have shorts, you have shoes, you don't need shoes.
And swimsuits aren't cheap.
They aren't cheap. So I understand, and yes, Andy knows they're doing a great job of trying to get swimming accessible to all. And I think if the government were to make a push as well, if there's a way that they could get involved and push, and maybe we should make swimming seem a little bit more popular, right?
I think advertising, the advertisement of it has to be pushed and seen as a viable, alternative to education, to health, to qualities that build leadership for young women and young men in our society. I think swimming has gotten a bad rap on that, and it's not swimming's fault. I think we have to find a way to just make it easier for the Bahamians across the board, from every status, to be a part of swim clubs. Maybe we need to look at creating local swim clubs that are not attached to the big name swim clubs that we find.
Well, there are a lot of swim clubs that are popping up. I mean, you do have big ones like Mako, but you have some smaller ones that are popping up that are a little bit more focused. And like you talked about, and I think Nikia may agree with this, that swimming did have a bad rap. I mean, track and field, basketball, which gets a lot of the play, I can see those people on the court. Once you're in the pool, you're just a swim cap almost. But I think FINA and USA Swimming are trying to make a change where they have the swimming leagues, where they're hyping up teams. And I think do you think that something like that could work here after like people like you who have, swimmers like you who have finished your eligibility, and you can do something almost on a professional basis, something like that locally that could push swimming to the forefront again and make it, not to sound stereotypical, but sound sexy?
So I mean, I did mention, maybe the government should make a push, but also, I also have a responsibility.
Yes.
Right? So does Jeremy Knowles, so does Ariana, and I know she does great work in the community where she is as well, and so does Alana and Verant Burrows. He is a part of a swimming program in the U.S. where he is. And so we should probably also take that responsibility on, because if you go into any of the inner cities and in those communities, you ask kids what they want to do. They want to go to the NBA or they want to run track and field. Nobody says they want to be a swimmer. No one. And maybe it's because they don't see us. Mm-hmm. They don't see that as a possibility for them. And maybe it's as simple as me going to an area or to a school and saying, you could do this too. Mm-hmm. Maybe if there is a demand, or if there's interest, then people will start to move in and do something about that.
Swimmers are making money outside of swimming. Like, I know Cullen Jones is big in Speedo. He's got contracts that are there. It's not as if there's not money to be made in swimming, because there are opportunities out there. I mean, if I remember correctly, Verance has had a contract for a while as a model. So there are a lot of opportunities out there. You talked about your own personal responsibility in helping to develop. Would you say that you need to, and not just you, but other females, Ariana, Alana, other swimmers who have moved on from competitive swimming, that you all need to take a more active role in the administration of swimming so that you can do what it is that you say, go out there into the...
Sell it.
To sell it. To be in that administrative role, to sell it.
Who better?
Right.
Yes,
Who better
exactly.
than us, right? And I agree with that. Who better than us? Who we know exactly what the needs are, what the wants are, the experiences, the makeup. So I agree. I think, I think we should.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're trying to get me to campaign. I'm being, cautious. I'm teasing. But I think who better than us who have been there. I know Nicholas Reese at one point had taken a real interest in being a part of the administration because of his experience as a swimmer and now as a parent of swimmers. So I think who better than us to be not only the faces, but behind the scenes as well.
What about women? You talked about swimming in general. What about women in administration? Do you think that that's something that's important? You talked about representation. Maybe the only way to get representation is to be that representation and push for it. Is that something that maybe you've thought about, or something that we need to push for our female athletes and specifically female swimmers?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, so it crossed my mind to get involved at some point, at some level, no matter how small it is. But I definitely think that we need to see our faces, right, the female faces out there at the forefront.
Nikia saying she thinks that I'm trying to put her on that campaign.
I'm just being careful.
I feel you on that. Again, thank you so much, Nikia Deaveux-Christie. Christie, she's now Nikia-Christie. I've held off on the entire show, making sure that Nikia Deaveux-Christie, but she's Nikia-Christie now. Again, the pioneer in swimming in the Bahamas. When we come back, we'll wrap up. You're watching From the Sidelines.
A lot of what we do as athletic trainers involves prevention of injuries or other medical situations. We're often the first responders on the scene when something happens, maybe at a game, at a practice, to assist the athlete if they need further care from a physician or having to go to the hospital. It makes a difference to have somebody there on the ground. I'm an athlete. I've competed in track and field and represented the Bahamas, so it's really an honor and a privilege to be able to use your expertise and to be able to give back and help future up-and-coming athletes, those ones that are staying home, that are representing the University of the Bahamas. We do travel internationally to compete against other colleges and universities, so I think that's really good to be a part of history.
Welcome back to From the Sidelines as we wrap up here with Nikia Deaveux-Christie, the pioneer of swimming at the Olympic level here in the Bahamas. She was the one that made it, to a certain degree, possible for Ariana Vanderpool-Wallace to be the closest swimmer to make a final for swimming in the Bahamas as a female. She finished 9th in her event and was literally this close to making it. And maybe because of all of that push, one day we will have a Bahamian female swimmer in the final. Bacchus, any final words?
Just really wanted to encourage Ms. Deveaux-Christie to find a place in administration so that we can push the agenda that you, or the dream that you may have for swimming. Because as a country, we need it. We need to find the next, especially the next female.
Nikia, final words?
Thank you both for having me. I really enjoyed this, and I'm happy to be able to speak for women in the sport and encourage all of the young girls out there. It may not be swimming.
Yes.
I'll push for swimming. It's my first love, very dear to my heart. I encourage you to get involved. If you're interested, reach out to any of the local clubs. Find out how you can get involved with swimming or any other sport. It really was a life changer for me. I'm so happy that I was blessed to take on this swimming journey. And even though I'm not swimming professionally, I'm more of a flopping around rec swimmer, it's still helping me to this day as I go on through life. So, I encourage all of you, all women out there, get out, be heard, be seen, be leaders, and get involved in sports in your area.
All right. Thank you, Nikia Deaveux-Christie. Again, a pioneer at the Olympic level for female swimmers here in the Bahamas. Thank you so much for joining us. On behalf of the entire team, including co-host Bacchus Rolle, I'm Chris Saunders from The Sidelines.